It's the best of times, worst of times. Tale of Two Cities. You know, I can't quote Tale of Two Cities without quoting the whole thing. Will you guys pull up the opening passage so I can actually read it? Anthony Gucciardi, you had some other news you didn't get to. We're in overdrive. Get to it.
You know, Percy, I think, set the stage now if we look to the future. Back when he was fighting this, there was little to no support, and now we have how many hundreds of thousands of people coming out to events like March Against Monsanto, and 96% of the United States public admitting they want GMO labeling, the USDA announcing today that they finally are making a government form of GMO labels, which is actually a victory because it means they're being forced to listen to us. So now it's up to us to just push it in the next direction to the next level to force and mandate GMO labeling on all products, whether it's by voting with your dollar and deciding we're not going to buy the junk anymore, or just defunding Monsanto as a whole. Because as you talked about before, this piece, I believe it's from Reuters, Monsanto loses $156 million in fiscal fourth quarter. That's been happening every month. That's why they're trying to buy up biotech giant Syngenta, which is even more concerning. They make genetically modified animals.
Well, I was getting to that next with Percy, but I never did. Going back at least 10 years, you see articles where somebody goes to get gene therapy, but they gave a blood ampule when they were born, and the companies have bought that from the government, and they go, sorry, we own your genes now, $200,000 for a breast cancer treatment, when it should cost, $500. And they're going, no, we own your genes. And the Supreme Court ruled they don't, but they're still doing it.
They're still doing it. And Monsanto sees big picture, because when you see a company losing money like this, hundreds of millions of dollars, they're actually gearing up for the next level stuff. So they're actually gearing up now in a fight or flight stage to buy up Syngenta so they can start making genetically modified cattle, genetically modified chickens.
Which, by the way, they're already doing in China. They've had for at least 15 years part human cows that produce human milk, that grow baby, actually humanoids, for organ harvesting. If you're a new listener, this sounds insane.
They have everything.
It's mainstream news. You can't make this up.
They have glow-in-the-dark cats, all the weirdest things in the world.
Yeah, those 20 years ago.
They're just going to start importing them now into the United States.
Yeah, the fact they're getting ready to sell glow-in-the-dark cats.
Right.
They're part jellyfish, yeah.
They're going to actually have the patents now with Monsanto and Syngenta merging, but this is
By the way, these GMO cats and rhesus monkeys that glow in the dark that you can buy in Hong Kong 20 years ago, they just spill off DNA and RNA, even though an animal's DNA, because they have RNA in them. They're just spilling stuff that invades your body and gives you cancer. I mean, they're just spilling these double-strand RNA. I mean, it's just a total nightmare.
Even goats that eat GMO soy, we found, have weird milk. They don't even know what's wrong with it. They just said it's disturbingly different. That's what they said.
Well, it's just sloughing viruses.
No, exactly. You're just eating the augmentations in the milk, in the food, everything. And when they actually modify the animals, it's going to get even worse.
I tell you, it's like space aliens have hijacked the planet and are actually doing this on purpose. I mean, this is so evil, man.
Well, the weirdest part about it is that people still support this. And
yeah, why are you being racist against GMO?
Yeah, why are you being racist against GMO? They go out, though, and they don't understand they're buying the macaroni and cheese that's full of GMOs. They need to learn how to identify these things, only buy non-GMO.
But then Michelle makes it all about fat being bad, not trans fat being bad. Or they say salt's bad when scientists say we have too little. Like they want to ban calories when it's not calories, it's what the calories are.
As she has a non-GMO organic garden in the White House where she only eats from. It's all distractionary techniques, just like the Michelle Obama lunch program, which obviously
is beyond Supermax food.
It is the most garbage thing in the whole.
It's worse than Supermax. I looked it up.
Yeah, it is. Prisoners, actually, I think they did a poll.
They did a
question. Prisoners wouldn't eat it.
Well, I've seen. I was looking at it last night for this show. I never got to it today. They have photos of the Supermax food versus this. It's night and day. I mean, they feed the Al Qaeda people at Gitmo lavish meals compared to this. Coming up in the next hour, Percy Schmeiser, the first farmer to prominently go up against Monsanto and be victorious, was first on with us when he started his fight 15 plus years ago. And he hasn't been on since. No, he was on the nightly news once. Now Monsanto has been derated from a good investment by major investment firms to a risky bad investment. Their profits are in trouble. McDonald's is in trouble. They're both an allied operation. This is Frankenfood. And they get up there and they lie And they say, oh, it's just like George Washington Carver crossing two tomatoes. No, because those tomatoes are closely enough related that they're able to breed together. But just like if you get a donkey and a horse, very similar, to have sex, they can procreate, but they have a sterile offspring. It's called a mule. I'm not a geneticist, but I know these basic things. It's like a liger, a tiger and a lion. You can breed them. The offspring, a liger, is sterile. What happens when you breed two tomatoes together that are further enough apart that they're able to get together and share their different traits, but they don't produce seeds, or the seeds don't produce more fruit? Tomato is a fruit, for those that didn't know. They've gone beyond that and created GMO where you'll have 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 traits in it, where it lasts longer. It doesn't die. Bugs can't eat it. If they do eat it, they die because there's a natural pesticide produced. Then they argue, well, it's a natural pesticide. Yeah, but you boost it 1,000 times or more. Yeah, the plant produces a pesticide or invites a fungus to grow on it that's poisonous, but it's not at that level. It's not inside the plant. You wash it off. Didn't used to kill the honeybees. And that's all 20, 30-year-old technology that's wreaking havoc right now. But as all this comes out, the system is panicking. At the bottom of the hour, our guest will be with us for the hour. I will do a 5-minute news blitz on incredible economic news, incredible world news, just over-the-top intel. And we've got economists coming out, mainline ones, with headlines like this. Millions upon millions of people are going to die on a worldwide scale when the debt bubble burst. I mean, video, student confronts Jeb Bush, your brother created ISIS. Iowa man arrested for Facebook post calling for murder of white cops. Roomba maker to develop smart robots to surveil your home. Manslaughter charge against black officer in gray case derails race agenda in Baltimore. Video, Marines practice of doing citizens inside internment camps. That's linked on drudgereport.com. It's on Infowars.com. Rand Paul visits secret room to read Obama trade, the SPP, or the TPP, calls for public release of deal. Yeah, it's thousands of pages long. There's a photo in the article. It's a locked door. They search you. You can't have anything on you. And then you go in, and that's since lawmakers demanded to see it a few months ago. For the last 2 years, while they've been writing this, the corporate lawyers globally, for this Asia partnership, Congress can't see it. I mean, just think about that. And it's the same thing. Who sits on these boards? Monsanto. Who sits on the IMF advisory boards? Who sits on the World Trade Organization board? You guessed it, Monsanto representatives. Who sits over the FDA and EPA? Monsanto. And back when I would get Jeffrey Smith and Percy Smizer and others on, Monsanto was suing people that criticized them then with slap suits. They were, and they still do. But that intimidation didn't work. Folks that brought you Agent Orange, dioxin dumped in black communities. I mean, the people that brought you aspartame, they bought Searle. They couldn't get it approved in the 70s. They got it approved in 1981. Now admitted to absolutely give you cancer, you name it. Kill monkeys in lab tests. I mean, this isn't a joke. Monsanto is the most devilish company I could think of. I mean, they really are wicked. And now the world is waking up. Every couple days, a new country's banning the importation. New studies have come out linking it to cancer in humans. The UN has come out. I mean, humanity is awakening. And by the way, it wasn't it didn't come from the top. It was the UN scientist. So more and more, just like FDA scientists in 2000 and again a few years ago, almost unanimously, it was like 99% of them sent letters to their bosses saying hydrofluorosilicic acid is causing bone cancer, brain damage, IQ reduction. Here's our studies. Here's our Harvard studies. It needs to be pulled out of the water. It doesn't help the teeth. You need a little bit of calcium fluoride. This is hydrofluorosilicic acid. If you're going to put it in there, you need to put a little bit of calcium fluoride. This is deadly poison. They just reduced it by half in the water and have now banned it in all pesticides. Already banned worldwide. We're having some devastating victories right now. And this is very exciting. And the man spearheading so much of this, and we sell his books and his films, Jeffrey Smith is international best-selling author, award-winning filmmaker, executive director of the Institute for Responsible Technology, and a leading spokesman on the health dangers of GMOs, the most recognized consumer advocate promoting healthier, non-GMO choices. And he's the author of the documentary and the book, Genetic Roulette. He's the executive director of the Institute for Responsible Technology, non-GMOshoppingguide.com, responsibletechnology.com, seedsofdeception.com. And find all his books and films at InfoWarsStore.com and support both of our operations. Jeffrey, am I overstating? And it doesn't mean we're overall winning the war. We've been losing it horribly. America's the dumping ground for everything. We know that, the test tube. But if we were behind 50 points in a football game, have we just come back 37 points and we've got a quarter left? And are we just lobbing Hail Marys and catching every one? I mean, it doesn't mean we've won, but are we not racing back to a global awakening? I mean, are we on the cusp of a new renaissance? Because it was dark having you on 14, 15, 16 years ago, having Percy Smyser on 16 years ago when he first launched his operation. Now it seems like, courts are coming out admitting Monsanto planted their stuff on their crops. Monsanto's having things reversed. I want to talk about how they're striking back, part 2 of this interview, but am I accurate with you at the center of this, who testifies to, major political bodies worldwide? Where are we right now in the global fight to not have poison food?
Well, we're definitely winning, Alex, and the chief victory is among consumers. As you know, in 1999, consumer concern on GMOs caused a tipping point of consumer rejection. And it was this very specific moment in time when the food companies realized that using GMOs was going to cost them money. And that moment in time was April 27th, when Unilever said no more GMOs in its European brands. The next day, Nestle's said no more GMOs in its European brands. The next week or two, everyone else followed. That tipping point of consumer rejection occurred in the natural products industry in the United States in 2013, when Whole Foods announced that when a product becomes third-party verified as non-GMO, it increases sales by 15 to 30%. Immediately, thousands of products were enrolled in verification. There's over 30,000 non-GMO verified products in the United States that tipped the natural products industry. Now we see products like Cheerios and Grape Nuts and Ben & Jerry's and Target Home Brands and soon Hershey's all declaring non-GMO on their package. As soon as they start increasing in market share in the United States, the rest of the food industry will realize, I can't wait till my chief competitor goes non-GMO before me, or I'll start losing customers. So we're looking for a tipping point of consumer rejection in the United States this year, or at the very latest next year. And we think there'll be a clean out of GMOs and direct ingredients over the next 3 years, and for animal products over the next 5.
And Monsanto is caving in all over the world and pulling its push in Europe for GMOs. I liken this to Hitler's collapse on the Eastern Front, launching a counteroffensive on the Western Front at the Battle of the Bulge. I think that's the point we're at. If we beat them at the Battle of the Bulge in the next couple of years, I believe we're seeing a collapse-level event of these operators.
Not only that, but we just got incredible ammunition from the World Health Organization last month that declared Monsanto's Roundup and its active ingredient glyphosate as a probable carcinogen. Since then, 30,000 Argentine medical doctors have petitioned their government to ban it. The federal prosecutor in Brazil has said that their government should ban it. The president of Colombia said they're no longer going to use it to spray on the cocoa fields to eradicate that trade. It was banned in Richmond in California, and it continues to be the subject. Pardon?
Bermuda just banned it?
Bermuda. So what's happening now is all over the world, they're realizing that Monsanto actually has known about these health dangers for decades. In fact, an EPA document became available showing that there was concerns about cancer back in the late 1980s. Similarly, there was evidence showing birth defects back in the 1980s. They've been covered up by Monsanto and regulators. And it turns out in Argentina, the peasants that are sprayed with this Roundup or glyphosate have much higher levels of birth defects, 400% increase region-wide, 70 times in one hospital, and an increase in cancer of 300% in one area and higher in other regions. We also saw in China, when they started introducing genetically engineered Roundup-ready soybeans for their soybean oil, it was reported that cancer and heart disease and other problems skyrocketed. I was there giving a presentation in Beijing last year. A general who was in the audience had earlier reported that he warned the government and warned the people that this new genetically modified Roundup-ready soybean oil was linked to all of these increased in diseases, and the army of China thereafter refused to serve its own soldiers GMOs, even though the government still allows the rest of the population to eat it.
In fact, that came out in the news that the Chinese elite are obsessed with non-GMO and were found to have secret government-funded gardens.
It turns out that the past Bush administration, absolutely insisted that their kitchen be organic, and evidently Obama has followed through. So it turns out that those that know the situation don't want to risk themselves. In fact, a former Monsanto scientist told me that 3 of his colleagues were doing the safety studies.
Stay there. This is amazing. I want to hear it when we come back. Ladies and gentlemen, I get so excited about voting with our dollars, voting with our euros, voting with our yens, our yuan, our rubles, our shekels. That's why they want to get rid of cash. It's why they want to force you into big box stores. It's why they want to make you only shop with the big mega corporations, because they have a plan for a global monopoly. Monsanto and other big GMO companies have admitted they want to make everything GMO, from trees to grass, and patent it. Now they're coming out and saying, that words are going to be copyright where you supposedly can't use them in language. They're now saying you can't work on your own car. In fact, this morning I was talking to a lady, and she was telling me about her Keurig coffee maker and how her one that she had for 2 years broke, so she bought a new one. And I said, yeah, I have one of those. But I said, mine's old. She said, well, you put the new little canister in there. It's not one of their coffees. It won't work. It's got a RFID chip in it. She was a listener, and she was telling me how she heard about that years ago. And, oh, yeah. And so you have to go in and basically put tape over it or cut the chip off so that her other, in this case, she said organic coffee, we were having an organic discussion at the gym, would go in there. So see, that's the type of monopoly they're trying to create. And I'm kind of diverting off into another subject, but it all connects. We were talking about Volkswagen. You buy a Volkswagen, 2 years later, your battery doesn't work. You go get a third-party battery, same battery, works great. They remotely, from the factory, turn it off. You have to go in and pay a $150 service charge to have them certify it as theirs. Now, that's where all this is going. And with this genetically engineered food, that's where it's going. Now, this is a short segment, Mr. Smith. Long segment coming up. You were going into victories right now. I'm glad to hear from you, the expert, that I'm not overestimating how exciting this is. Let me shift gears, and we'll go back into good news and where the rest of the fight is in the next segment. In this short segment, as we talk to Jeffrey Smith, responsibletechnology.com, probably the leading spokesperson fighting this stuff on the GMO. There's Mercola and others, but they cover the whole spectrum. Let me ask you this question. How is the empire going to strike back? What's going to be their Battle of the Bulge counteroffensive? What are they doing?
Well, they're spending millions of dollars now promoting the, quote, benefits of GMOs through media, and also trying to discredit those of us like me and Vandana Shiv and others, claiming that we are anti-science and uncredible. So they're actually cornered against the wall. And in discussions with my colleagues around the world, it's clear that they're doing a full court press. I'm here in Ecuador, where the country actually has a constitutional amendment saying that no GMOs are allowed. If you look at WikiLeaks, the United States government had a plan to undermine the Constitution here and get them to overturn it. So they actually paid for bringing reporters from Ecuador to the United States so that Monsanto can train them how to report on GMOs. And sure enough, they started giving Monsanto's false talking points in the press here in Ecuador. Then they surrounded the president, who does have the ability to overturn the constitutional prohibition. And he came out saying that GMOs could increase yields by 400%. And he's now against the constitutional provision. It turns out GMOs actually do not increase yields at all. In fact, many times decrease yields. But agroecology, which was recommended by the world's experts, that increases yields, which he's ignoring. So they're focusing on the 4 targeted areas: politicians, media, the general public, and farmers, and trying to use as much evidence as they can, which is false, to try and convince them that this is absolutely necessary to feed the world, to save economies, to prevent the use of agricultural chemicals, all of which has been
Sure, but the
demonstrated as
effects
false.
of it are so deadly. We're 30 years into this nightmare that no amount of BS is ever going to paper over the prima facie reality.
Well, I'll talk about it in the next segment about the specific diseases that we now know are probably linked to GMOs. I'll say probably, but I'm very confident, as thousands of physicians in the United States who are prescribing non-GMO diets, they are very confident that these particular diseases are linked. And why it's so important now not to just buy non-GMO, but to buy organic, because Monsanto's glyphosate or Roundup is sprayed on wheat, barley, lentils, sweet potatoes, sugarcane. Over 100 different crops are now authorized to have high levels of glyphosate residue, and it's sprayed just before harvest as a ripening agent.
Briefly describe in 1 minute why glyphosate, I mean, they admit it grows breast cancer. Why is it so deadly?
Well, I can do it in 1 minute, but we should spend a little more time. It's noted. It's definitely a probable carcinogen according to the World Health Organization. It's linked to birth defects. It's an antibiotic that kills the beneficial gut bacteria. It causes an overgrowth of negative gut bacteria. It blocks the gut bacteria's ability to produce tryptophan, which is a precursor to serotonin and melatonin, so it can affect mood, behavior, sleep, blood sugar chemistry, as well as obesity. It also is linked to an endocrine disruptor. It also blocks the liver's ability to detoxify.
Stay there. I want you to recap all that when we come back. And I'm sure it's all an accident that these eugenicists that gave us all this other bad stuff at Monsanto came up with this. I'm sure it's all an accident. We'll be right back.